is really best for not only a North American transferring money over to Germany, but anybody who's moving to Germany for the first time. Hello everyone, my name is Jenna and welcome back to my channel if you've been here before. If you haven't, a little bit about me. I'm an international who moved to Germany about 6 years ago, and I've been jumping through hurdles and bumps the whole way along, and I figured when I first got here, there's a lack of information on the web, so I was going to build up this huge platform for the city that I'm living in, which is Düsseldorf, to help other expats and internationals just like myself. I've since expanded to life in Germany here on YouTube, so this is where you'll find some important things like where to get the best bank account, which language schools might be best for you, do you really need to know the language, and some fun things like cultural differences and different things that shocked me as a Canadian while living in Germany. So since we've already talked about getting a bank account and setting up that bank account, the next step that you're going to have to do is to send money over from the bank account that you currently have in your current country over to Germany. So how do you do that? There's numerous ways, and we will discuss them in this video. But the biggest thing I can tell you, and you might have heard this before, is don't use a bank transfer. This is the worst thing you can do. You'll likely get the worst exchange rate and the highest fees. So there are alternative options which we're going to go through today, and we're going to talk about some of the do's and don'ts when transferring internationally, more specifically from your country over to Germany. So I have to apologize now. I have a cold, so you might be able to tell with my raspy voice and red nose, but nonetheless, I'm bringing you this video so that you know what you should and shouldn't do when transferring money over to Germany. So before we talk about some of the different options that you have for international transfers, it's also important to know that some banks have low fees or no fees or whatever term they want to use. Don't get caught up on that all the time, because you can quickly go through every single website and see which ones have fees and which ones don't, because some of them do charge $0 to transfer your money with their transfer services. However, there are other things that you need to consider, like how is the exchange rate, because if they're offering a really bad exchange rate, that's where they're going to be making that money from off of your transfer. So having no fees doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be your cheapest option, so it is important to do the research ahead of time. And make sure to always check the exchange rate. As I mentioned, your bank is likely going to give you the worst exchange rate possible, but each and every transfer service offers a different exchange rate. Some of them are willing to compete and to compare, which means that you can actually reach out to them and tell them, I found on this transfer service that they're offering a better exchange rate. Can you match that for me? This is what I did, and it worked like a charm. It was super easy. They immediately offered me the exact same exchange rate as the other competitors, and I was able to use a service that I loved. So if we're talking about do's here, definitely reach out to the contact reps. And not a lot of people think to do this, but it's so important. I personally hate reaching out to customer service reps because I always think if the service is easy enough, then I can do it on my own. No questions asked. However, in this case, you might actually be able to get a better rate, perhaps a lower fee. It's definitely worth asking. And lastly, before we get into some of the different companies that you can check out, it is also important to know that companies and rates do change. So you might ask on an expat Facebook forum, hey, what's the best transfer service to use? A lot of the time you're going to hear about TransferWise, and that's because TransferWise is a super popular company to transfer with as an expat here in Germany. They are great, and we'll talk a little bit more about them moving forward. However, I just want you to know that TransferWise isn't always the best option. There are other options that could be better or could be worse depending on the time, their exchange rate, the fees. Things always change, so make sure that you're checking and don't always rely on other people to give you answers. You need to do that research for yourself as well. I'll tell you about my experience. So I actually wrote a blog post on lifeindusseldorf.com, and I will link that up here for you right now. But this blog post was a test to compare and contrast all the different different transfer options that I had to see which one made the most sense as a Canadian transferring money over to Germany. So I went through 6 different options, which was the obvious transfer through your bank, which was a definite no-go, transferring through the good old faithful Western Union, which also used to be a great option, and it is still a great option if you're looking to send money extremely quickly. But if you want to save on those fees and exchange rates, definitely don't use Western Union first. There are other options that are going to be cheaper. PayPal is another favorite. So I tested out PayPal, and I have to say, of course, if you're sending money internationally, especially if it's a different currency, there are cheaper options. However, if, for example, you're already living in the EU and pay in euros, then transferring euros over to euros from your, let's say, Spain bank account to your new German bank account, you can just use PayPal because they have virtually no fees sending money over to family and friends to another EU bank account that is in euros. So as an international, it didn't make sense for me to use PayPal, though I do love them and I do use them when I'm transferring money of the same currency over to another bank account. And then the other options I compared were all of these brand new transfer services that keep popping up left, right, and center on your screen. They are marketing themselves bananas. And these are services like TransferWise, TorFX, CurrencyFair, XE. There are so many to list. And while we're going to go through a few of them now, I'll finish up my story about who I actually ended up choosing. And for me, that was TorFX at the time because they happened to offer me a transfer fee of $0, and they also competed with the TransferWise exchange rate. It's not that they're always going to do that, and it's not that every single company is going to be willing to do that, but again, it's always worth asking. So I went through all of these different methods, I tested them out, and I really wanted to make sure what is really best for not only a North American transferring money over to Germany, but anybody who's moving to Germany for the first time and needs to transfer their money from one bank account to another. So at the time, my answer was TorFX, but of course, as I said, they're constantly changing. So if I can give you a recommendation, it is definitely to stay clear of any bank transfers or Western Union unless you need that money fast, or PayPal unless you're sending through the same currency. But to go with these new and improved transfer services, they are just as safe, if not more safe, than some of your older options. So contrast and compare them all, but right now we're gonna go through just a few of my favorites from what I've experienced and the research that I've done and the tests that I have made. So let's start with TransferWise first, since I've already mentioned it. And they have a very, very excellent, easy to use platform where you can just scroll through, you type in the amount of money that you want to send, in which currency you're going to send it in, and then you can choose which currency you'd like to receive it in. So they will immediately give you an estimated rate, the amount that they're going to convert for you, and then, of course, the fee transfer. The fee transfer will vary depending on how much money you're sending over, but TransferWise is relatively affordable. So that fee, for example, for 1,000 euros is probably going to be between 8 and 9 euros. So it's not super expensive, but there is a fee involved, and they are very clear, and they state that very obviously right on their homepage, how much you're going to pay and how many euros you are going to receive in exchange for the money that you are converting. TorFX, which is another one that I mentioned, which is the one that I have used most often, and that is because I have to say their user interface is beautiful, but I don't find it as easy or as simple as TransferWise. However, I find the customer support at TorFX to be absolutely phenomenal, and it makes it really easy for me when they're the ones calling me to ask me, do I need any help with what I'm doing? Do I have any questions? And of course, when you're transferring such a large sum of money, especially if you're transferring everything you had from back home over to Germany, it's really nice to have that customer service and the fact that they're just simply so friendly. They'll give you their phone number, they'll give you their email, and you can really just contact them anytime you want. So while the ease of the website might not be as TransferWise, it is definitely worth it for the amazing customer support experience that you get. CurrencyFair is my third favorite and the third one that I'm going to mention to you today, and that is because it is one of the newer transfer options, but they are also very heavily competing with TransferWise and other companies like TorFX. So they often offer better prices than all of them combined, and that's because they're offering such a competitive edge right now that it's definitely also worth checking out your other options like CurrencyFair or perhaps other new ones that are popping up all the time. The CurrencyFair user interface online is actually very similar to TransferWise. So you will punch in how much you want to send in the currency you want to send it in, and they will immediately tell you how many euros you are going to get for that. They have a standard fee, so while TransferWise's fee is going to differ based on how much money you've sent over, CurrencyFair at the moment only charges a fee of 3 euros. Of course, that can change. From what I'm looking at today, they are charging 3 euros fee in order to use their transfer service. All in all, they are relatively similar to one another, so just do that quick check. Make sure you've compared the exchange rates and the fees. But the way that transferring money with one of these new services works is quite simple. So you'll send the money to the transfer service from your bank, and depending on where that transfer service company is located, for example, TorFX is located in the UK, so I actually had to transfer my Canadian dollars from my bank account into pounds in the UK, which meant I still had to pay that bank fee of, for me, it was about 30 Canadian dollars in order to send it over to TorFX in the UK. However, when they sent it over to Germany, I did not need to pay a fee from my German bank account. So I did still end up saving a ton of money. However, if the currency that you're sending to the transfer service is the same currency as where they are located, then you might not be paying a fee at all from your bank, which is even better. So basically that company is going to hold the money for you, do the exchange with the exchange rate that they've promised, and then send it off to your bank here in Germany, and voila, you've got money. If you've used the transfer service before, let me know. I'd love to know what you're using and what you would recommend. Of course, as I said, it's always different depending on what country you're coming from and how much money you might be sending over. So definitely leave your responses in the comment section below. If you like this video and if you like any of the other videos I've been publishing, please give me a thumbs up. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell if you'd like to receive more updates and more tips on moving to Germany and more fun stories about expats living in Germany. That is all for me today. If there is anything else or any questions that you have, please let me know. I've created a growing list of topics I'd love to chat about here on YouTube. So the more that you guys can give me, the more videos I can create. Vielen, vielen lieben Dank und bis später.